Hello, and thanks to you to be there. Just for the beginning, sorry for my poor English. I think you will try to understand what I will say. So we are talking about sustainable API green score. In French, API numériquement responsable. So I'm Yannick Tremblais, like you introduced me. I'm working for Groupe Rocher, and you probably know two of our brands, Yves Rocher and Petit Bateau. And remember, only two people in the world never forget your birthday. It's your mother and Yves Rocher. My company are a mission-driven company since 2019. And our objective is reconnect people to the nature. And for that, for the IT part, we've got responsibility and missions in 4 pillars with the green IT, eco-design of IS. This is the reason that I'm here today. Responsible IT usage and IT for green.
And on my side, so Julien Brun, so I'm leading the Center of Enablement of API and EDA for the group. And like Groupe Rocher, so we have our sustainable program within L'Oréal, named L'Oréal for the Future. And I'm part of the digital part of this sustainable program.
To understand better why we are here today, in 2021, my team and another team in Groupe Rocher participated to the digital challenge of Apidays. So this is a message to invite you to onboarding for next year. It's very important. We said this morning it's 3 months. It's not take a long time to do that. We are meeting with a mentor which explain you what is impact. You've got a lot of calls this morning, and this is the same behavior, the same way you've got interventions, and you can introduce that in your project. And so we win the Silver Award in 2021 for the HIP hybrid platform, and so for the API platform. And we won a prize also for the data part.
And for L'Oréal, so for the same, so we participated last year to the digital sobriety challenge organized by Apidays. So I encourage you to participate to the next edition. It's really important to know to each other, to get some tips in order to improve the frugality of your digital assets. And so last year we win the Google Award during the challenge.
And to finalize the ads, we had the link to the challenge, but you've got all the information on Apidays.
So first of all, as mentioned during the introduction from Gaël, so nothing really exists on the market, on the industry to measure the environmental impact of the integration in API especially. So that's why we are sharing our studies and works to the industrial communities. And thanks, Christelle, to be there. She's also part of the community. And because the environmental impact is a shared concern, it's not a Groupe Rocher concern, it's not a L'Oréal concern or AXA concern, so we have to share all together all these works. And we encourage you again to be part of this kind of community, to enrich what we are doing in order to have something more, how to say that, more... Yeah, operational. Yes, it's already operational, I think, but for all the industries, in fact, okay, more relevant per industries, because some rules can be relevant for L'Oréal, for example, but not necessarily relevant for another company, and vice versa. So we have to enrich the model, and so that's why this kind of guidelines must be, and calculation rules must be shared, validated by everyone in order to be recognized as a standard. And by this way, potentially other actors can reuse it and propose some added value to this kind of calculation rules.
So we are talking a little bit about our collective. It's API Thinking. It's a French collective created 2 years ago. And at the beginning, it's more for the bank and insurance part. It's a free collective. We've got a lot of company now, more than 80, with different part industry from energy, insurance, bank, commercial, cosmetics. And we've got a lot of diversity. We've got users in this collective who use API and can create around the governance, create some things around the portal, or we define the portal, we can challenge it. We are not linked to enterprise or to commercial tools. We are just sharing our experience. And for our work group, we are working about sustainable API. I do it again in French, API numériquement responsable. And in this work group, we are 5 people and we are working between 5 and 8. And we are working to how to define what is the goals for us, how to evaluate an API. So the API green score, the most difficult part was to create a name and a logo. This is the commercial part, so it's only a joke. The most difficult part is to say there is nothing in the world, on the IT world. You've got a lot of tools for the front end, like we said before. You've got Eco Score Design or a green score. You've got something for the back end, but for the API, it's more difficult to have some tools to involve and to experiment. And so we shared to work on about 7 different domains. I will share you just after, to find relevant metrics for the stakeholder can use. It's important that we've got a scale between A and E. It's not the same value or the same impact that you've got for the electronic goods or for the car goods, sorry. The way it's to evaluate, give an overview for everybody and say, yes, we can improve it, we can have a better note, but it's not a judgment. It's really to be more efficient or better and better. And this toolkit concerns also eco-design and eco-consumptions. So this is the reason what I spoke about users and product owner. Another important point is to share the evaluation method with all persona, API owner, API consumer, and API designer. Everybody is concerned by that. So we talk about 7 domains. Be quiet, I will not give deep dive for each one, but it's important to understand what we have this kind of discussions. So we've got about API lifecycle. First part, have you got referentials which give all the API? Do you know well which API are existing in your system? It's the first part for us because during the evaluations, if you have not this kind of referentials, it's difficult to say we need to optimize the number of API for the same use. The other one, it's a data exchange. How you manage the exchange between the different systems. The objective here is to reduce the impact of the exchange message between. And if you have no tools to evaluate the size of the payload, it's very difficult to improve or to be better. For the data, concerns more how you collect the data, how you retrieve information. When you call an API, do you retrieve all the systems? No, not all of course, but unused, useless information. A point for the architecture, it's to promote the event-driven architecture, the async API, but probably in your company or in your system or in your team, it's not possible, but it's a way to be a better consumption of API. A large part for tools, we got a talk just after with Google about how to measure for the covered footprint, but it's important to have metrics provided by the infrastructure and metrics about the language. We can make a battle between Python and C if you want, but you probably see a lot of things about the energy impact of each language. So you need to adapt between the value and the energy impact of the language and the capability of your human resources to develop in Python or C or C++. The infrastructure, of course, this is a large impact. If you can scale up to scale down when you want. So if you use Kubernetes, it's better to do that. It's easier to do that, but it's possible with another technology. And of course, the communication, the reasons that we've got here today, to share with a lot of people our criteria, sharing with your peer this criteria, and adapt the communication to the people. If you've got technical people, probably you need to go deep dive into some subject. And if you are COMEX or comité direction, it will be different for the discussions. And for each of domain, we create a card to help people to understand what is the idea behind the card. When we're talking about API lifecycle, we wrote who are the users of this card. Who use it? when I use my API, how many times I call it, where are the users, have they got many versions in the same time, who are the governance for this API? Do you know well who manages the API? What the tools can influence the value? Have we got some analytics to provide you to give you some information? So each time we provide this kind of card to help people to understand, and after we go deep dive in the rules.
So right now I will present you the calculation grid. So where you can see all the rules you have today. So of course it's not a static one. Please feel free to contact us and to work with us to enrich it with your use case. So it's not easy to read here, but the rules are categorized in different categories, of course. So all the rules related to the architecture of your API, the way it's implemented from an architecture point of view. A design part, so with all the rules in order to see how your API has been designed and what is the impact of each kind of design could impact the environment or energy consumption. And you have one part dedicated to the usage. Again, we are not talking about only API eco-conception, but also API eco-consumption. So what is important is also to sensibilize API consumer to consume the data in the right way. And the last thing is related to the logs, because of course we are moving a lot of data. We need to store to track it for the business, etc. So we can have a huge impact in terms of energy consumption by storing a lot of logs. Yeah, that's it. And maybe a point that is important. So we have the weight for each of the rules. Okay, so this kind of this weightings is relevant for some companies, and of course maybe the weight can be different for different companies depending on the way you implement each of the rules. Okay, so it's really a tool that you have to use in your company to adapt. You can use it as it is manually. You can also automate the calculation of the score. It's what we are doing within L'Oréal. I think it's a good start. So feel free to complete it. Thanks. So right now, one example of the rules. So here we have the name DE for design. So it's a rule dedicated to the design. As you can see, of course, the usage of the JSON is better compared to XML. So the size of the payload will be lower. So here, we have the explanation about the rule. We have what is the persona. What is the persona involved in this rule? So here it's the API producer or developer, and the impact is related to the network, compute, and storage. So by doing JSON, we have an impact on the three layers. So if you can switch, thanks. So now it's an example. For the same data, you have the difference between the JSON and the XML. So as you can see, for this small payload, we are not talking about a big difference. Okay, so it's only 15%. But I let you imagine what is the impact for billion of call. Because when we are talking about API, we are not talking about batch once a day, etc. We are talking about a lot of calls. So we can have a huge impact in terms of network. We have a huge impact in terms of storage of the data, and in terms of compute, of course. So here another example is the usage of the cache. So when you implement an API in an API gateway, you can implement some cache mechanism. By doing it, you can reduce the consumption at a backend level. Okay, so it's really at backend level first, and at the network level. So it's important to put it in place. So depending on the use case, you can or you cannot implement the cache, but it's something we measure in the score. As you can see here, so the cache is calculated at different points. So do you have a cache enabled in your API gateway? Yes, no, it's a Boolean. But it's not enough. So it's not because you have a cache in place that this cache is efficient. So he needs to be linked to the freshness of the source system in order to align the time to live of the data in the cache compared to the source of truth of the data. We need to make sure also that we have that the cache is used efficiently. That's why we need to, of course, to calculate if it is in place or not, but we need also to track the performance of this cache. And it's what we have in the next slide. Thanks, Yannick. So here, just an example of a dashboard we are doing. And you can see, so we measure per API the number of calls that are coming, the data is coming from the cache compared to the global volume of calls. So it's important. So we are measuring the performance of the cache in the API where the cache is in place.
When we are talking about to share the information with all persona, it's very important to share this with the API consumer, because if you don't give them an overview of the impact of the usage, it's difficult to challenge after and say you need to implement cache when you make the development or take care about it. This is the impact. It's very important to share this information with all persona.
Yeah, and maybe to complete a little bit your remark, your comment, Yannick. So most of the time we are doing in our CI/CD pipeline, automation pipeline, some report in terms of data quality, security, so DevOps, SecOps. But right now, what is important is also to give GreenOps information. Not only that the code in the code review, or the sustainability aspect is really key and important in order to show to the developer what is the impact of his code, of his design. It's something really important to improve the solution.
So you see, well, it's a L'Oréal solution. We don't do that already in Group Rocher, but it's to give you some key figure to use that. So now I will talking about log. When you call an API, you create a lot of information, a lot of log. You've got information of the hour, the timestamp, sometimes the details. So you've got information about the cache. Do I use it or not? Information about relevant information. For me, it's the brand, the country, the applications. Is it a mobile application or is it retail solutions? And you aggregate a lot of information. And if you don't make a job to say, is it necessary to keep this information 1 week later in detail, 1 month later, you can have a lot of information. And we experiment that in the past. We let only during 1 month, and we discover we've got a lot of data in our Elastic system. When I said lot, it's a terabyte. And it was important to make aggregate information. So I will show you. And so in these rules, it's important to identify who are involved. And so, of course, API producers and API consumers. If you have no usage, no consume the API or no log. And the most relevant value was for the storage, but of course, by dependence, the compute is important when you make dashboard. So here, this is an example we have for Yves Rocher. We've got a lot of call with the details, so I give you only information. It's important for the support team to have the response time. I need to know if my API works well or not, or if I've got a bad result. I've got the detail for the methods, and I've got 1 line per call. So the day when the API the report was produced, it's important to have this information for the support team. But 1 week later, I don't need this information. It's not important, or it's not relevant for me to have the response time. I just need an average value, and I just need per hour the number of calls that I need. I'm informed that I will lose some information, but it's not so important for me. The graphic here is the impact you've got. So if you let the log the log in the system, it can grow up very quickly. And so you need to implement some rules. So you can do it on your API platform, but you can do it also in your log system. And we did it. And we earn a lot of space by this way. regarding the system we've got. So we've got today we've got a low maturity of information. We've got some reports, we've got some analytics, a carbon footprint dashboard, but the results sometimes arrive too later to make adjustments. And so we make a choice with the collective to start by the eco design and the eco consumptions, because this is some way we have got the hand to adapt and to adjust it. And the final way is to be able to have rules close from the real usage. Today's analytics, you say it's a sheet, Google Sheet or Excel sheet. You produce it, but it's one time. It's like an assessment. The next level will be able to collect directly the information and be able to be more efficient and can adjust very quickly. So this is the reason that we need a carbon footprint to be able to understand what's happened. So this is a link for the next call later. But on this part, it's important that users understand well what is the impact of the API. So today we haven't the information directly. It's a global information of global usage. And some cloud provider produce a carbon footprint, but it's not deep enough for us, for our usage. And the information we can retrieve can help you to evaluate the impact of the compute, of the network, of the disk storage. So this is two samples. The first one, some people will know well. It's for Google and Microsoft. And you've got global information. You've got it 1 month later when you use the system. So today I've got the result only for October. And it's a global overview of our GCP platform for my usage, but for Microsoft it's the same, and for other cloud providers it's available also. So you need to create your own dashboard. We did it on the right side to evaluate the impact for one project, one precise project. We've got more than 100 projects on our cloud provider, and we'll use that only for the API platform, API network. And just one relevant information I can share you, it's just here. This is the impact of the carbon footprint of a network part for our API platform. You can see we've got a big one just here. So we decided to have our runtime only in Belgium. Belgium, it's nuclear energy, and this is the way we decided with the cloud team to do that. But we introduce a network component, a global network component, and this global network component in our API platform were for the internet and run on US platform. And our usage today is on French time, but in the US it's the night, and so this is not solar panel or wind, which gives the energy, the electricity. So we need to adjust. In September, we changed these components and said it's not for internet and not for global, it's only for Europe, and so we can adjust quickly the impact. Without this kind of dashboard, it's not possible to evaluate the impact. And we are talking about API. This is the usage of my API on my API platform. So the last word we can say?
If you want to conclude, Yannick. Again, the message, please feel free, join the collective in order to enrich what we have done. It's not finished. We count on you to help, to contribute, to give feedback. It's not perfect. It's a first step, as mentioned by Yannick. And we have a lot of things to continue in this, to improve this calculation score and so on. And you can scan the QR code in order to have all the documentation and things produced by the collective.
And a last word, we've got at the original only 20 minutes for this talk, so this is the reason that we reduce the size of the presentation, but we share you a small use case, but you can understand we've got more and more, and on this link you will see all the work we did since 1 year.
And actually, we've got quite a lot of time for a lot of Q&A, and even if you want new use cases to be displayed, I believe that you've got some on your computer as well. So who wants to kickstart questions? Yeah. So please just wait for the microphone because the session is recorded.
First, thank you for the presentation. In fact, I have several questions. The first one, you shared that you participated to a challenge, sustainable teachability. I see that it was organized by Google. So
No,
not
organized by Google.
Okay.
No, it's organized by Apidays, in fact.
Oh, okay.
Google is partner of this challenge. I don't know who we are in the 2023.
I think Google will still be there, but they give the money, and that's pretty much it.
Okay. and so, how can we participate at the end?
Actually, Nicolas, I don't know if he's here. No, not yet. But I can introduce you with the one running the challenge in France. And actually, breaking news, we're trying, and we're pretty confident that we will also have the challenge in London next year. And I will be the one in charge. So,
okay, great. Thank you. Next, well, maybe there's also some people. In terms of vision, I know that you for the moment it's somehow a draft. You are still building it, but what do you think to make it so? You want to make it public? Would it be through, for instance, RFC, IETF publication, or something else? How do you see it from?
Publication of the 3D, you mean?
Yes.
But today it's already published in the API thinking. But what could be interesting is to have this kind of rules in the ENR documentation, etc., to be recognized by all the community. Because today the API thinking collective is only for French companies. Okay, so and again it's a shared concern. So more we are to contribute, better it is.
and just the INR for the non-French speaker, it's the Institute for Sustainable IT. So it's a pretty big academic body that has got branches in Belgium and Switzerland as well. So, and most of the documentation is in English, so it's pretty accessible online.
We made the choice to produce this result in English because together we work for an English company, and my team in US, Arbonne, need this kind of evaluation and kind of tools to improve their API system.
They don't work for English company. This is kind of the French rock stars, okay? We suck at pretty much everything except designing things around beauty. So they are French company, but they do work in English, actually. They are French company.
Well, maybe, sorry, many question. Okay, so it will be published in a research paper at some point. Okay, great. Next question, what is an API for you? Because I'm sorry, but well, I heard that maybe in some case it might not be used, it can be not that used, but for me we can have a post, a get, whatever. So, but the post can be widely used, the get widely used, but not the delete and the method. So, will it for in your perspective, the API represent the resource on itself, or is it in the each endpoint that are different?
Okay, we don't, for this evaluation, it's a first work. So we don't want to go deep dive for each kind of usage, each kind of word. So we evaluate globally the API. But like we said, it's a tool and you can appropriate it, you can manage it like you want. And if you want to go deep dive, but I think it's a hard job, you can do that or give some samples by kind of verb for delete or for post or for gate. Because sometimes for one API, we can have many resources, but at the start of the beginning, it's customer, for example. Customer, you want some details. So it's important to have the good granularity of what you want for the evaluations. If you go very deep dive, it can be a hard job to do.
Thank you. Maybe I can give the microphone to someone else.
Yeah. Other questions in the room? Yeah. Here.
when you spoke about the example of JSON versus XML, so you mentioned that compute was affected, obviously. Is it compute both on the server side and in the device it consumes?
Yeah. Of course, we have an impact on the backend side, but here it's more the impact on at the API gateway level. Okay, because one of the difficulties is to measure. So, our companies want to measure the global footprint in the use case, from the front end to the back end. So, the difficulty is to avoid to measure 2 times the same thing. So, we are focusing on the design itself of the API through the gateway, but potentially it can be extended but it really depends on the strategy of your company in terms of measurement of the impact energy consumption.
Yes, here the focus was on the data exchange between the API gateway and the backend, and API gateway and the front end. It's very located for the measure.
So the additional impact on the device that will consume the API, it's somewhere else, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but we have the link. It's the same. So we are measuring, for example, the error rate for an API. Okay, so more you have error, more you have to replay your process, your API call. So you have a direct impact at consumer level, in the API gateway, eventually at backend level. So everything is linked.
More questions. We've got some time for other questions, and so because of the console, so go for it. No shame in having several questions.
When you roll out this approach in your companies, do you see countries that are more ready to adopt versus, was it across the globe the same kind of change?
For Group Rocher, it's a global commitment. Airborne is a B Corp company, so it's not only IT, but the IT is a part of this one. So B Corp is an evaluations for the CSR, for the human part, for the technology part, for the transport, energy consumptions. And so this is a small part, the API, what we did, but it's an important part for the IT system. So it contributes for the eco-design, for the system, eco-usage, it's one part of this one.
And on L'Oréal side, so it's mainly an European concern. So to be honest, Americans are interested with what we are doing, but not really incent today by applying the rules. But it will come. It will come. But
do we have other questions? I will not start the next talk before because some people might join actually on time. So do you allow me a question? Well, that was kind of a killer look. But no, but connecting with Sarah's talk this morning, do you think that at some point you could incorporate in the grid being carbon aware and maybe connecting to using I don't know, Green Software Foundation SDK, and is it feasible or not? Because it's not that much quantitative metrics, but more like qualitative metrics. So is it feasible or not?
I think yes. Again, it's a first step. So today it's a qualitative, but the aim at the end will be to measure the real impact of the application of the rule. Okay, so it's what explained Yannick today. All the reports we got from the CSPs are not granular enough. We don't have enough information to clearly identify what is the footprint of the API usage. Okay, but I think it's the next step. So right now it's more a way to push people to better design, better use their API. But at the end, we will need to identify clearly what is the energy consumption per call. It's the ambition that we have.
And we share this information, those document and grid last week. We deploy on Friday. Yes, we did it. And it's important. This is the first step for us, the first discover to be front of you. And we need your help for that. And you need to contribute. You need to contribute of it, and you challenge the result. Christelle did it last month, but it's important to have another view on other contributions for this grid.
Yeah, we've got a question here.
Hi, thank you for the talk. I have a more global question regarding the, let's say, the adoption of the best practices by the engineering team themselves. Because we know there's so many parameters to take into account when you design an API. So how do you actually convince everyone to take even more things with this green API topic into account when they develop?
It's not difficult to convince because we're engaged. When we share the pillar we've got, the eco-design, all the IT team are engaged for that and need to contribute. Of course, it will be difficult sometimes to explain. We need more time, or we change the behavior of the API to introduce cache or to reduce the number of information. One example I give this midday is, okay, we create the API and we retrieve all information that I need. For me, it's retail. I need some information in my shop, and probably I want to have all information. But is it really the use case? Is the use case is to know only the hour of opening and closing for the shop, or do you need all information of it? And it's important to have this mindset to challenge the requirement for the users, for the team or digital team or other, to challenge that and to have this mindset. And we not need to convince them, but they've got some keys to push the questions.
And within L'Oréal, we do a little thing different. So of course, some people can be interested by improving the energy consumption of the API during the design, etc. But we stick. So the API green score you have here, we are sticking the API in the API catalog. So I think it's really an incentive for people to don't have the E letter on their API. It's also a way to push people to change the things.
A bit of a name and shame. that can work as well. Do we have? Yeah, I saw one hand being raised.
Thank you. It feels to me like most of the practices for sustainability are pretty much most of the time best practices, like best coding practices. Does it happen to have like coding practices conflict with sustainability practices?
Can you please elaborate a little bit more?
Yeah,
Sorry.
for example, like let's say you want to a more concrete example is like JSON against XML. Now most of the time we just choose JSON by, I don't know, for good practices and for efficiency, and this I would say is kind of good practices in terms of coding or just designing, developing. But does it happen that there is like an abstraction between sustainability practices that goes against actual coding practices that we have as a developer?
I've got a good sample with a big ERP. We said we need to use JSON instead of XML, but the exchange way is OData, which used XML. So of course, it's difficult to say you need to use JSON. It's better. You consume less network, but you've got an ERP at the backend. I don't want to give the name, but it's with 3 letters. And it's difficult to say to them, okay, you can change the behavior for use it, and instead of OData, find other solutions for the exchange. But the same way, we've got discussion for the integration part between exchange files instead of exchange use API. We've got the same usage. We can, it's small step by step. We give some information for everybody, and they can change probably their behavior or the way to be more sustainable for the development.
Yeah, sometimes we can have some conflict. So just one example. So you talk about security. In the security, one of the rules in the API gateway, we can use what we name opaque token. Okay, in the opaque token, the size of the token is really small because we don't have inside a lot of information regarding the scope, all the security aspects that you can have in your IDP, for example. So, for example, we have decided at L'Oréal to expose an opaque token externally and to let the management of the real token with all the information between our API gateway and the IDP. So it's also a way to manage sustainability and security constraint or technical constraint. Okay, it's one of the examples. I don't know if it answers your question.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you.
We will have more questions. You stick here with us for at least 2 hours.
The next year we will book all the afternoon.
Yeah, I know. But you've heard about Arnaud. He told me about reinforcement feedback loop, and you're actually caught in a reinforcement feedback loop. The more questions will bring more questions.
Hello, I have another question. It's an architecture question more. I wonder how you can join sustainability and modern architecture evolution. So you leave monolith to microservices, and so you think that there are many data exchange by the network. So it's I think it's a bad footprint with microservice instead with monolith.
No, but it's not. Microservices, for example, is not. In fact, you can have a positive impact in the environment and energy consumption because the data is close between the different producer and consumer. Is closer. We don't have to do some hop into centralized application, data centers, etc. So you are closer to between them. So I think you can have a good impact in terms of networks. And technology can have also some advantage. So in the rules we have, for example, the EDS. So the event can improve the energy consumption, the environmental impact of an API, because instead of having, for example, what we name pooling madness, people will call your API to get your change since the last execution, etc. So we have too many calls for nothing. So the technology here, the new technology, so the event broker and event-driven architecture can help to reduce this environmental footprint.
Okay, it's better if you're microservice or localized at the same place physically, and you should not put your microservice one in each continent.
Yeah, but we have to find the right balance between where you want to locate your application, where will be your consumer, etc. So again, it's not we will do things to be fully green without taking into account the reality of the business. So we have to do a mix to find the right balance.
And one of the objectives of this kind of tools is to open the mind. Avoid to be focused only on your API or the design of your API. It's open your mind, open the usage, but both for users and IT teams.
Okay, thank you.
And if Olivier can join us, just to prepare, but stay here. We've got more questions for you. So, yeah.
Well, on the topic of microservices, I just wanted to mention that what's interesting in the Green Software Foundation training is that you see the patterns of consumption of servers. And so there's a fixed, an idle server consumes already about 60% of its full energy consumption. So when you've got smaller services, you improve the usability, utilization of servers, and so that's also in the right direction versus big monolithic applications. With just an additional comment on the question.
Maybe it's one part we miss about microservice architecture, etc. in the grid. Maybe feel free to again to join the collective in order to